Hey, so here we are, another episode of Asymmetric Power with Doctors Brearley and Neumann. So thank you for much. It's always a pleasure to do these things with you. And so in today's episode, I think we wanted to talk about navigating risks for companies. What do you do if this is sort of the ultimate VUCA scenario we're going through at the moment? Volatile, unstable, and ambiguous and complicated. Um, with the tariffs on and off, and supply chains being threats of supply chains being disrupted, Ursula von der Leyen saying that they they can lash back at America basically by the regulation of big tech or taxing big tech, which is to their mind actually a trade deficit that the United States sells more to the U.S. To Europe than it consumes. So and then what companies can do about that, and what should we and what might be potential good partners in the region. So so
Vanessa, I think that there's two types of commentary on this right now, and they're very different, and they're distinguished principally not by being left or right, but by looking at the short term and looking at the medium to long term. And I think in the short term, things are a bit stressful and crazy and unpredictable. However, in the medium to long term, things will settle down. And as I was commenting to you earlier in our pre-discussion, I think that there was an equal dislocation to developed country economies when we started outsourcing to China,
mm,
and working class jobs started disappearing and communities started dying and the opioid crisis ensued. That was also a wrenching period, which went largely unremarked. It's kind of like when the coal miners in England lost their jobs and Margaret
right.
Thatcher said, well, you can reskill. And they were just told blithely to reskill. I think we are certainly going through a tectonic shift of that
Mm,
magnitude right now, but it's the other direction. So at the end of this tunnel is reshoring, building again the industrial base of America, partnering with our friends and allies in Latin America, a region you and I care a lot about.
yes.
For example, with the recent re-election of President Noboa in
Right.
Ecuador, what a fantastic partner we have there. There are precious minerals in Latin America that
A
can
lot of
be,
them.
a lot of
A
them that
lot of them. Europe.
remain unexploited. And
Right.
so I think if you can hang tight and,
Right.
keep your white knuckles on the steering wheel and get through to the midterm, there are lots of good things coming down the line. Now, I have been told I'm too positive and too naive in this,
Right.
but that's how I feel right now as an economist, already slightly trending towards I rather like tariffs. I never saw
Right.
outsourcing everything to China as a great idea.
I want to push back on you just a little bit. To just to sort of say, so the thing is, we needed. So first of all, I agree with you that Latin America is a great partner, so much so that here in Madrid, people are, there are all these things coming out from the elite business schools here. And I think also Ursula von der Leyen herself has also said that, we'll look for new trade partners, this new agreement with Latin America and Africa, which is, of course, next door. Um, and that because they could supply these critical minerals, and they're pushing to replace big tech with their own tech stack. And I'm not saying that it's credible, but this is the open discussion. I mean, this is the email I got yesterday about, what are the things that might be able to replace Google and Microsoft that are more sort of European native. So
Right.
I think that's a very, very tall order. But that's what's happening here in response to what's happening in America, that the United States is viewed as sort of an unreliable partner, rightly or wrongly. But they're looking for those things. But I agree with you that this, that I think that we're repeating a mistake, that and we're not reskilling people. I mean, the issue, for instance, that the video that went viral of Tim Cook talking about that iPhones are made in China because they can't make them in the US. They just don't have the people who sit around all day and have those phenomenal building skills. It's a workforce problem. And even Louis Vuitton very famously set up a factory and in one of the southern states. And there are losses of inventory or inventory shrinkage, I guess, what never made it to the store was more than double of what it is in other manufacturing facilities, because the American workers don't know how to work the leather in this certain standard and with the stitching and the thing and all of that. So whether you're talking about leather handbags or Apple iPhones, you've gotten, huge titans of global industry to say that they would love to bring these jobs back to America, but the workforce isn't trained for it. So I I think that they were abandoned then, and I think that unfortunately by not prioritizing the reskilling first and cutting back on education and is not, especially post COVID, where everybody's education got slammed,
Yeah.
is means that the working class is going to pay more for their refrigerators or their food or their
Yeah.
cars,
I
and
don't
they're
know
not
about
going to get the new
food.
jobs.
I don't know about food. I think, handbags are luxury handbags are not what working class Americans would be buying anyway. And maybe
But they
not
would have
even.
those jobs. But they could have
Yes.
those jobs, is what I'm
Yes.
saying. They could
So
have
I
those
think
jobs.
I think the way through this for American businesses, and I also see another distinction between the political classes and business people. The political classes right now, the chattering political classes, are getting very emotional. America's unreliable, and Europe has been cheating us, and China is stealing our IPs, and there's a lot of sort of emotion. But I think business people are not emotional, and they know that countries don't have feelings, and they will have to, by necessity, adjust. I do think upskilling working class people very quickly is going to be hard. But you know what? If I was a business owner in America, I would be looking to shorten my supply chains, absolutely looking to Latin America. And you know
Yeah,
what, Vanessa? I'd also want to hire eager young students from community colleges and not the Ivy
yeah,
Leagues. I
yeah, yeah.
think there's a moment right now where across the left and the right, people are realizing that the Ivy Leagues are not perhaps all they're cracked up to be, and they're not producing the kind of workers that we need with the
Hmm.
kind of critical thinking that really distinguishes us from an AI robot. And that's
Right,
also very important going forward. The kinds of, a lot of this skilled work that you're talking about can probably be done by robots anyway. So those are not the things that
well,
we're going to be needing, human beings to do, but we do need humans with critical thinking skills. And I
right.
think you're probably more likely to get those in a community college that's humble. And,
Yeah,
these kids are poor, and by necessity, my stepchildren all go to community college and they
right.
work
Well,
really damn hard, and they are not spending their time doing social justice stuff. They're doing
right,
internships in hospitals and
right,
learning
right,
how to save lives, because they don't have time for
right, right.
social justice stuff. So I think, I don't know, I am concerned, and I saw the little video of, I don't know if you saw it. It was like an AI mashup of American workers trying to do the kind of skilled labor that
Oh
you're
yeah, they have like
mentioning.
the Nike shoes and the
Yes,
iPhones and stuff. Yeah,
yes, it
yeah.
was
There are
very
various
clever.
versions of that.
Yes, it was very clever, and the point was incredibly well taken. But I don't think things are actually going to move as fast as we think they are.
Right,
And
right.
I do think we are anyway, under Biden, we were looking at reshoring and increasing industrial policy because COVID showed us that we are very reliant on Chinese manufacturing, and
Right.
China is not an ally or a friend, and it's quite far away. So
Right.
I also worry that, will people be prepared to pay more for better quality because we're so used to this mass consumption, and it's a bit of addiction. There's lots of articles about how we
Right.
buy too much, we're on our phones too much. We all know deep down that we don't
Well,
need
you
all
mean
this
like the
stuff.
fast fashion? We don't need,
Yes,
you're with your closets exploding every season,
right.
and that you think more about, using clothes. I mean, with my daughter's school, I said, my daughter's just grown. I don't need the clothes for a 3 or 4 year old, and they're in phenomenal clothes in great condition. And the attitude was, oh, what? No, 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 we won't take them. I'm like, well, but you've got a 3 year old. I mean,
Right.
who's gonna cover it in blue paint anyway. So yeah, I think that we need to have more of a cultural shift of not having that instant gratification. But I think that it's going to be very hard. So what would be your advice really to to companies who are trying to navigate this? The other thing I'm seeing the trend here is that a lot of people are actually hiring sort of security sort of experts. They're zooming out on what is their understanding of risk, of more geopolitical risk, right? Uh, don't forget that now they're looking at the United States through a lens that the United States used to look at other countries like Latin America. We all quipped, all those of us who were born in Latin America quipped about the autogolpe, right? Um, like, oh, right, no one in Latin America has made it through life without living through an autogolpe. So welcome to that feeling. Um, that we're seeing now that there people are literally hiring people to understand whether what countries are going to go to war, what that's going to do to commodity prices. Bankers have always done it. I mean, obviously, the JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs, and you have these analysts who sit there all day and crank that out and pay former spies to map that out. But even sort of more traditional companies are now saying, I need to understand those risks.
I
So
rather like that trend, Vanessa. I think that's quite a sensible thing to do. Better to hire them than a, ESG expert, which, by the way, I used to sell myself as, and took it off my CV when I realized that that was a defunct name. It's not that I don't care about the environment or social sustainability or governance of
mm,
companies. I do care about those things, but I think we came at it in the wrong way. And so what you're saying, a risk expert, a security expert, is something a bit more grounded and real for companies
right.
to
Yeah,
hold
this
on
is what's
to.
likely to happen. Yeah.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? I think
Yeah.
that's quite clever, quite strategic. However, we have to acknowledge that we're living in a moment where the usual order of business doesn't apply. Things are happening really fast. The government in Syria fell in one day. We didn't think that
Yeah.
could happen.
No.
Tariffs were hiked up, so I, having worked in an area, international development, where you're sort of always surrounded by these black swan events.
Right.
And I also was an equity markets reporter. I feel like I surf better these, extreme changes. And also I've been a gig
Right.
worker for most of my career. So
Right.
I'm now like, hello, everybody, welcome. And you're saying, hello, everybody, welcome to how it was to be a Latin American.
Well,
By the
right.
way, I think
Exactly.
it was Vargas Llosa, may he rest in peace, who
Yes.
died a couple of days ago. I think he coined the alto golpe, or maybe he didn't, maybe someone else did, but
I'm
he
not
certainly,
sure.
with Fujimori, he certainly talked
Yeah.
about it. So yeah, now we usher in the era of the risk management experts. Why not?
Right. Yeah.
Until maybe they show that they don't know how to how to predict risk. But you can certainly create strategies to manage risk.
So
You can certainly do
what do you
that.
think? What would one of those things do? I mean, we talked about the Novoa presidency being a good opportunity because there were you and I had discussed that a while ago that that he was talking about inviting the Americans back into the Manta base, where for more security operations. But um, and and security is why basically he got reelected, because it's something palpable. A woman not afraid to walk her daughter home from school is like very real. It's
Yes.
something. It's not ideological. And Latin Americans are used to dealing with hyperinflation. I look at inflation of 6%, and I'm like, dude, I come from a country we have 1,000%. Um,
Exactly.
that's a whole different uh, set of skills. But I think. So, what do you think? Do you think that that's a good thing to continue to reshore, upskill your? Do you need to upskill your own workers? Do you encourage companies to hire their own workers or train their own workers to think more strategically? You mentioned critical thinking skills, and a lot of people, by the way, love founders of businesses who really toughed it out rather than just the Ivy League schools, right?
Yeah,
Quite a few people think that.
I would love to see businesses, American businesses, creating more opportunities for, the community college people, the internship, apprenticeship systems like they have in Germany. I would like to see more linkages between the real world and what
Hmm.
students are studying. I have desperately wanted for Latin America to be a real engine of growth, and trade, throughout the Americas, throughout the continent of the Americas, and it seemed that it was going to happen every year, and then it wouldn't happen. And I've been talking
Right.
about this for 25 years, but maybe
Yeah.
now it will, and I'm forever hopeful, because it is the future of the region, and you can't
Right.
change your geography. And I love Latin America, and
Yeah.
I actually did a lecture recently, Economics for Non-Economists, for a group
Oh,
of
fantastic.
young, brilliant students here in Nicaragua. They were so interested. There was nothing jaded about them, hungry
Mm,
for new opportunities. These are the kinds
hmm.
of young people who will really be the leaders of the future. So I think that Latin
Hmm.
America just offers so many brilliant opportunities for business leaders in the region, but we do have to listen to people like you on the security
Yeah.
piece. If a
Yeah.
woman can't walk down the street with her little girl and be safe, then none of this is going to happen. And so, going back to your original question about the risk experts, yes, you need Vanessa first,
Yeah.
and then M can come along and sort out your economy.
Thank you. I like the pitch. I really appreciate the pitch. Yeah, I think the other thing we're seeing here in Europe is now there's a lot of funding coming through for small businesses. Digital transformation, and that's spurned a whole sort of cottage industry. But as you say, I think that getting real with the education and make it practical, and hire experts who teach you how to think about risk and black swan events and how to navigate that are some really good tips to think about.
I
Anyway.
remain cautiously optimistic for this episode until next time. My hair might be more frazzled, but we can tell the state of the global economy by the situation with my hair. It's pretty well brushed right
Exactly.
now. It's not
Oh,
frazzled.
good, 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 good. I'm very happy. And so you're like the price of the McDonald's and the Economist.
Yeah, or the length of
You're right.
skirts.
The length of skirt, the length of skirt. Exactly.
Exactly.
All right. All right, darling. Until
Happy
next
Easter,
time.
Vanessa. You look amazing, by the
Happy
way. I'm so
Easter.
glad you're not getting in any fights anymore. You look great.
No, no more fights. No more
Good.
fights. Or at
All
least the
right.
ones I'm winning them. Yes, exactly.
Excellent.
All right, sweetheart. All right. Thank you
Take
very
care.
much. And we'll see
Bye.
you and we'll see the audience very soon. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Bye, Vanessa.
Bye.